We're live. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tom's Hardware Podcast. Yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed our new animation video that we just tested for those of you who are watching. It'll have sound next week, but we are trying to add some graphical flair to this weekly show that's 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. BST every week, the Tom's Hardware Podcast. This week, we have very special guest, Lorraine Underwood.
Hi.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hi.
Who is going to be showing us an awesome first-person Raspberry Pi camera that she's set up, that she's developed. As always, we have Tom's Hardware Associate Editor, Les Pounder.
Hello.
Raspberry Pi expert, Ash Puckett. And myself, Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Avram Pilch. How are you guys all doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Good. I want to remind the live audience that we are always open for your questions and comments. So keep them. We see them as they come in. So keep them coming in. So how is everybody's last few days? Les, what has been going on in your Pi life?
Lots of crazy things. It's literally been Pi cases everywhere for the last week in my house. So I've got the old Gem Pro case I showed off last week, and I've got more cases. One from Cooler Master as well, which looks really nice. Another one from Acacia.
Are these Pi 4 cases?
These are Pi 4 cases, yeah, especially designed for the Pi 4. So this one from Acacia, the Gem Pro, especially designed for Pi 4. And it's got this wonderful little gem. In fact, if I can switch to the overhead camera very quickly, it's got a better light to it. No, it is not letting me. Live demo. There we go. You can see a bit better. It's got this gem design to it. And I was a little skeptical of this. I didn't think it was very pretty. I thought it was it's just random shapes. But the thermal performance of this case is fantastic. It's all passively cooled, and it's brilliant. So there'll be a review on the site this week all about that. But yeah, love it.
It looks like a shell.
A shell?
Oh, we can't hear. Is he trying to talk?
Avram, you're muted.
Oops, sorry. Yes, it's not the prettiest to me, but if it gets the job done, it gets the job done. Ash, what have you been playing with recently?
I've been working on trying to host a web server on the Raspberry Pi, and I know that we already have a guide posted on Tom's Hardware about how to set up an Apache server, but this time I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I have a web server hosted using software called Flask. And the reason I chose Flask is because I wanted to use something that would integrate with Python, my ultimate goal being to add buttons on the web page that will interact with any hardware that's connected to the Raspberry Pi. So in the meantime, I wanted to show you guys some of the progress that I've made so far. And again, I can't stress how easy this was to set up. I'm going to switch away from my face here. And the way that Flask works is it runs with the basic Python script, which if you can see my screen, data.py. Running that will actually launch the server, and the HTML file for the website goes into a templates folder, and anything static that you have, like CSS files, images, those go into the static folder. So if you can see, I've got all the images that I've used. And when you put it all together, it looks like this. There we are. And that's running entirely off of a Raspberry Pi. And again, it was super easy to set up. I just built it in Dreamweaver and dragged and dropped everything over. And there you are.
Wow, that's really cool. My son and I actually used Flask a couple weeks ago when we were working on an STS Pi robot build, where we found that someone had built a Flask interface for it, and then we modified it so that we could use it to control the robot. So he keeps coming back to me saying we need to do more with Flask. My 8-year-old's talking about Flask. But we had built one of these Pimoroni STS Pi robots, and we were controlling it remotely using Flask and we put forward, back, turn on RGB lights. We actually embedded the camera feed on the Flask page too, so that's pretty cool. But speaking of things that are pretty cool, I want to talk to our guest Lorraine Underwood. Lorraine, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You're a published author. You work for Element 14.
Yeah, I've only just started working for Element 14, so I do videos for them. So my first video, which is the VR headset, went live on Friday, so that's really exciting. So I'm Irish, but I live in the UK. Actually, don't live too far from Les there, so we experience the same weather. And I'm a maker, so I make things. I make projects. Most of them, I have to say, involve lights, so like shiny lights. Not a great fan of robots or motors. So that robot you had there that's a really cool one. I love those motors. It's real speedy, that one. So I work at Lancaster University. I'm a senior teaching associate there. So I teach undergraduates computer science for the day job. And then any spare moment I have, I'm making and I'm creating content.
Wow. Great. So you have a very special project that you just completed this week. Tell us about it.
So yeah, the idea came. You ever see drone racing, where they wear like the VR headsets and they're driving a drone? I just think that that's the coolest looking thing I've ever seen. And I thought, I was thinking about it'd be really cool if they could control the drone with their head, but the speed the drone goes, they'd probably just give themselves whiplash. It'd be like. So I was thinking it'd be better off like a remote control car. And I saw a guy done it with Arduino and radios and quite expensive equipment. And this was actually 4 years ago. My husband and I made a project called Nora the Explorer for Maker Faire UK. I think like the second last Maker Faire UK in Newcastle. So we built a little robot car, had a camera on it, and you could drive it with the Wii, and then you could see the camera through a VR headset. But the idea was when you moved your head, there was a servo on top of the car, and it would turn and look around like you do when you're driving. But obviously, Maker Faire, 5 minutes in, the servo blew, and we didn't have a spare one. So kind of fast forward 4 years later, we're kind of doing a lot of video chat meetings, and it just always happens. It's actually just me who does it, where you're talking to like 6 people in a video chat and you're going, yes, we'll have that done by 4 o'clock. And you're kind of giving your boss like the secret wink, wink. And you realize that he doesn't know that you're looking at him. He just sees you. So I thought it'd be a really good time to kind of create that project where a VR headset moves something in real life. So that's what I did. I created it. Shall I demo it here?
Yes, please. That would be awesome. So
this is my amazing drawing skills. I'll share my screen in a second. I'll show you the screen. So I've actually just got it on a website, not on the VR for the moment. So I've got a website which has got this video camera streaming on it, and it's got some arrows. So I'm going to click left. So it moves the little head 5 degrees every time. And actually told me I went too far left then. And then I go right. And this we can go up and down. So I don't know why you would want to look up in a meeting. And then you can just go back to home. But sometimes it goes a bit crazy. But yeah, so it's just it's a Raspberry Pi 3, but I had it working on a 4, no problems, with the Pimoroni pan tilt hat. So it pans and it tilts. And with the VR headset, what we do is you get the information out of JavaScript onto a web server that's hosted on the Pi. So it'd be really interesting actually to look at Flask, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm hosting an image, a video capture on a website and sending that information to the Pi. So then the Pi controls the servo with the information from the phone through JavaScript. So it's a few languages it goes through, from the phone, JavaScript, to the Pi, Python, and out to here.
Wow, fantastic. So are you able to, what's the difference between using it on the website and using it with the headset?
So the website, you've got arrows. Shall I show you the website? I've got a share screen button here. It's giving me some tips. Oh, no. It says no. It said Chrome and Windows 10 is a bad idea. But the website just has 4 arrows, like a cross. So you press that arrow to go up and then left and right. The VR headset, so I'll run it on my phone now. It gets the accelerometer data from your phone. So it's getting like the live feed of where your phone is and sending that to the Pi. So on the phone, you just go to that website. I'm going to the IP address of that Pi, which can't be reached. The problem with having a basement is that you have 2 different Wi-Fis, so I think I'm on the wrong Wi-Fi. Live demos. Hang on.
So what's really neat is it can actually work with the accelerometer on your phone or the accelerometer in a VR headset, which I guess this VR headset you were using was a phone, right? It was.
Yeah, it was my phone inside a VR headset. We have this guy, and he's reacting. So you can see it's just a bit too sensitive sometimes when I move the phone.
I think that's awesome, though. What I really would love to do with something like that is I would love to create a telepresence robot. Even a stationary one for my office, so that my coworkers and I could have a more interactive day. I'd love it if Les was able to drop in on me, so to speak, almost like that. You know how Amazon has that drop-in feature with Alexa? I would love it if there was a way to fix it. So maybe I had that with a screen.
So a guy just did
right
one.
over there.
Ross Atkins has a telepresence robot. So you put your phone into a little robot, and it shows your face, and then you can drive the robot around the room. On Kickstarter at the moment. Have you got one? He's got one.
Yes.
That's exactly it. But you can see people's faces instead of like a stick man.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would, because there's not a lot of places to drive around my office, I would just put it like in the corner over there, or maybe like maybe put that rotation camera maybe above one of my monitors or something on the wall. And
you can have so much fun.
Yeah, and then
just
have
put a pocket over it if you don't want to talk to people.
Yes, no privacy, or people that we work with will know exactly how many times I got up to get a drink. They'll be like, look at you, you're not even in your office, or how many times my kids come in and try to bug me all day. So they would keep a track of that. But that is one of the things. I mean, I think that kind of intimacy is what's lost now, that a lot of people aren't able to work in an office with other people, as we used to have an office for Tom's Hardware, and maybe we'll someday again, but we're all in quarantine world here in the US, so our office is permanently closed. So someone has a really interesting question that I will put up here. William asks, what if the setup was multiple stationary cameras and the movement switched between cameras? It will eliminate servo speed issues.
Yeah. How would you do that? So you'd have to switch.
I think you're muted, Lorraine. Still muted, I think. But I think that's a great. I think that's a great idea, William. Oh wait.
It's an interesting
How
idea.
about now,
Having
Lorraine? Can
the
you
number
talk
of
now?
cameras.
Yeah, we're here now.
I was saying, you can only put like, I think I saw someone do two cameras on a Pi. It's just switching between IP addresses then, wouldn't it? It would just be like jump from here to here to here. It's doable, definitely.
Yeah, in a way, it sounds easier to do if you had multiple cameras, but kind of cooler to actually have something that you rotate. I think that
the fun is the noise of the servo. It's like eek, 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 eek.
yeah. Yes, William was saying at certain angle threshold switches camera. Yeah, I think that's good. I think we should do both. I think you should have it so it turns, and then when you reach a certain point of your turning, it turns to another camera that can go even further or something. But I just love the concept of this because it brings some intimacy. So have you made any good calls with it?
No, I've not really used it. I actually had to recreate it today for this call. I don't know about you guys, but as soon as you use a project, you need another piece from that project for something else. So I needed a Pi 3 to do something else. So I'm not
that leads to an interesting question, which I will ask the group plus anyone who's listening or watching right now. How many Raspberry Pis do you own? I will start with our special guest, Lorraine. Off the top of your head, how many Raspberry Pis do you own?
Working. I own a lot of different versions. So I got a Cambridge Raspberry Pi Jam. Very kindly gave me like 10 2Bs. So I have them. So I have probably about 20 in total.
20.
Is that too many?
No, not at all. I will reveal my count last. Ash.
I think I have 3 within reach, but counting everything I have total, I have to have at least 10. So Lorraine's already got me beat.
How about you, Les?
The last count, I think it's about 40. I think
we have a winner.
So yeah, I'm not that close. I think I have 15. So I think I have 15. And just this week, for this reason that you said, like, oh, you put something in a project, you don't want to take it out, not working on the project right now, like this robot I have in the drawer, like that's a Raspberry Pi 4. Yeah, if I need a Raspberry Pi 4 for something, I could take that whole thing apart, but I'm never going to put it together again. So consequently, you have to buy new ones just to have them in new projects, right? So I have something like 5 Pi Zeros, like 3 Pi 3s, and a Pi 3A, and then like maybe like 6 Pi 4s at this point. I just got another Pi 4 this week because I know I'll need one. Also, you have them in cases, right? And some of the cases make it hard to take it out of the case, because if you take it out of the case, you're never going to like put that case together again. So that so like here I got one sitting around. This is in a Muse case that was like $10, and this is one that my son uses for programming stuff. And like this, I could pull this out of here for something, but then it's all screwed together. The plastic's a little cracked. If I take it apart, we'll probably never put it together again. So like that's the story. I believe Maker Melissa's Lab says 15 total. Yes, and Raspy PKR Tutorial says 12 to 15-ish, right? And never enough. So remember, I think the other for our first episode of the show, we had Eben Upton on, and he said at the time 34 million Raspberry Pis have been sold, but it could be just to us and the people watching. We could account for all of that between us. I'm just saying.
I'm doing pretty well. I've got about 3 that are permanently running. So yeah, I've got our like TV server is a Raspberry Pi. I've got one over there that's running the 3D printer, the Miller, and I've got one on my stairs. So they are being used, which is good. It's like, how many do you have in a box, which is the worrying question, isn't it?
Somebody asks, I know the answer to this, but I'll let Ash answer it. Where you got the retro game in the background from?
This is a PyCade cabinet that is made by P. Maroney, and it's a kit that you can get, and we just updated ours to use a Raspberry Pi 4. But yeah, the name right there, PyCade, look that up and have a lot of fun. You're going to love this. It's basically like a whole arcade cabinet. It's got the joystick, the buttons, and everything.
Yeah, I have one of those also that I've tried. Had a little bit of trouble putting together the 10-inch one. You have the 8-inch, right, or the 7-inch? I think, but I think they may have made some revisions since the early beta version of it that I got last summer for the 10-inch. But it is a really incredible arcade machine because you've got the stick and you've got all the buttons. Obviously, you've got to install your own RetroPie, but that's pretty easy to do. We have tutorials on how to do that on Tom's Hardware if you don't know how. There's just a lot of great stuff out there for doing retro arcade. I mean, no joke. We put up this week, since the last broadcast, we put up our list of the best Raspberry Pi cases on Tom's Hardware. And one I have here is the Retro Flag GPI case.
Oh.
This is another retro case. This is about
That's a nice case.
This is, I think, $70, and it's for a Zero exclusively. You take the Zero, actually goes in this little unit that looks like a cartridge, and you pop it in, and you've obviously got to install your own retro Pi and games. But it actually takes 3 AA batteries, so you just power this up like an old-fashioned Game Boy, the GPI Retro Flag case. And I don't have the batteries in it, so I can't show it right now. But it works pretty well for those kinds of games. If you're trying to play a console game, this Pi Zero will be somewhat of a limit, and so will the only 4 buttons and D-pad be a limit. But it's cute. So there's a lot of retro gaming. For those who are not familiar with retro gaming on the Raspberry Pi, we could do a whole show or a whole series on that. It's like amazing how much. And so besides the PiCade, of course, you can build your own. Since we mentioned it, this is my project my 8-year-old and I worked on a while back. Now I want to give the credit where this is due. I got instructions for this from howchew.com, which Ash also writes for. And this is a Pi 3 inside with a USB joystick controller. Now, I would have rather used, now that I know about it, a Pimoroni PiCade X hat, because what I'm doing is kind of ugly, which is having if you can see what we're doing, we have a USB cable that runs outside the arcade box and around from the Raspberry Pi to what's inside, which is a USB joystick controller that controls the joystick and the arcade buttons. So that's a challenge. I think the hardest part of building this actually was making holes in the plastic case. There are many plastic cases you can buy. I think Pimoroni has some where you can actually come with holes for your buttons. I strongly recommend that over trying to do it yourself like I did, because I got plastic all over the place and probably breathed some in, and I had to get a new kind of drill to like drill the holes, and it took like 50. You would think this plastic was bulletproof or something because it was that hard to drill through. So it's there's a lot of retro gaming going on in the Pi space for sure. That's like 90%. I mean, something a lot of people are into. Speaking of retro gaming, I wanted to show a quick demo of something different, but retro gaming related. What I have here is, let me show this. I have, and honest, we're not running a commercial for Pimoroni, but Pimoroni makes a lot of the coolest stuff. Pimoroni and Adafruit are like the big leaders, I think, in the space of. They're not the only ones, but they're big leaders in space. So what I have here is a platformer game that my son and I programmed. Oops, I died. To go on this LED matrix, which is the Pimoroni Unicorn Hat HD. And I have a red and white character who I can't name because that name might belong to somebody. but you can jump around. It's hard to do it while holding it in front here, but you can jump around and collect yellow things that are coins. And oops, I died because you only have 5 lives. I'm still working on the part of this code that says game over. But if folks are curious, I'll just show really quick some Python that I use to make this, and we'll actually have up a tutorial where I will not use any of the music that my son and I have put on here, because it might be music that is associated with a particular brand. Anyway, so here is a look at the at the Python code for this game that we call Platformer, and we're using the library for the Unicorn Hat HD, which is that matrix, which is 16 by 16 pixels. And what we have here, we're also using the PyGame, PyGame Python library, although that is primarily for drawing things on the screen, not on LED matrices. So what we've done here is we have it so when we actually run the game, there is a little bit of a window that pops up. I don't know if those who are watching can see it right now. There is a little bit of a window that pops up that actually shows you what your score is and how many lives you have. That is a computer window as opposed to the matrix, because we can't fit all that information on the matrix in addition to the game. This is right now like several hundred lines of code, so I won't take you through it line by line. But one of the things that I did is for every single thing, I have an array of where the pixel should be. So for the little flag that's at the end that you have to get to at the end, that's an array of pixels with coordinates. We have different sounds that play. We have the variables for the positions of the 2 different bad guys, and also for their current position, which changes as you move. And we also have a function in Python for drawing the bad guys, for drawing the text on the screen and showing the score. We have functions also for drawing the background, which is just all blue pixels with an array of where the white dots are for the clouds, drawing the flag, drawing the coins, and drawing the platforms. And then here's where it gets challenging. We also have functions for detecting whether when you move your character, it has touched a coin, it has touched a bad guy, and if it's touched a bad guy, were you falling when you touch the bad guy? Because if you fall down on the bad guy, it kills him. If you touch the bad guy, it kills without falling, it kills you. We have a function to show an animation, make you blink when your character has died, and we have a function here to draw your character. Now, and of course a quit function, but the whole thing is occurring in a loop, because that is how gaming with PyGame, which is the library that people use for creating games on Python, works. Everything is a giant loop that is while game running equals true, and what happens is it draws your character based on the keys that you hit, if you're moving left, right, or jumping, and then it tests if you're jumping, whether you hit your head on one of the platforms, because it has to see if you're going to pass through one of the pixels for the platforms. Obviously, we can't let you just go through a platform. You have to fall, because that would be poor physics, right? And then we also have to look at not only what keys you pressed, but we also then at the end, everything gets drawn and it tests to see whether you touched a bad guy, whether you touched a coin, and it shows the score. And of course, if this is all a loop, if it comes to the point where you quit or you lose all your lives, it ends the loop by setting the variable game running to false. So that's a lot to go through, and I won't bore everybody with every line of code, but I will be doing an article on this shortly, so folks can see. What I want to do actually is I want to make it so that it will not be dependent on running on Pimoroni's Unicorn Hat HD, and that we'll be able to run it on other LED matrices. So here's another LED matrix. I'm showing another LED matrix I bought off of Amazon. This one is 32 by 60. Actually, I guess it's 64 by 32, 64 wide, 32 high. I'm going to buy a bunch more of these. I'm using these with the Adafruit RGB matrix bonnet on a Raspberry Pi Zero. This is where another one of my 15 Raspberry Pis has gone. So I'm going to try and make it so that this code is adaptable for different types of displays, including more traditional RGB LED matrices, not just the Pimoroni one, which has its own library. So I have to figure out. I'm still learning how to do the library for a generic LED matrix. I found that the documentation out there has not been too great, which is, I always view that as an opportunity, because that means we can write a really cool tutorial, because that means that the documentation is a little bit hard to read. We can help people. So that was a lot. Sergeant Lee asks, what are our favorite retro games? I will start by asking Lorraine, what are your favorite retro games?
Oh, it just has to be it has to be Mario, like Mario Nintendo. My son has the Switch, yeah.
Yeah.
And it has Mario Maker on it.
Oh, that's my son's favorite.
It's just my dream game. I'm just like, this is what I wanted to do when I was a child. So Mario Maker, you get to build your own worlds and build your own blocks and have hidden blocks and challenges, and like, oh, it's just brought me back. Like, it's fantastic. Yeah. So it just brought me back to my love of Mario, really.
My son is, all he does all day, for better or worse, is trying to make video games right now. He's 8. So he has Mario Maker for the Switch. He also likes to program things in Scratch. He's obsessed with Minecraft, making things in Minecraft. But I try to steer him toward things that are in Python, because I feel like that's a more grown-up programming language with text that he should learn. So I encourage him to work on things in PyGame and to code things with Python, because I feel like that's the most grown-up thing, and he can actually learn text code. But he's also trying Unity now, and he's asking me how to learn C#. And to be honest, I need help. So
my son is 8, and he loves Minecraft and all that stuff. And he plays Roblox.
Oh, that too.
And he wants
Roblox.
me. So I've made him a game. It's a Roblox Studio. You can code your own games, but it's in like TypeScript, which is JavaScript. So we've made like a test game, and he's just told all his friends. But you can't do anything in this game. You just walk somewhere and then you die. But he's so proud. But he didn't make it.
Yeah. My son has me working every night on this LED matrix game. But to be fair, he does learn some things from it, and then we end up having these weird conversations about which programming language has the best syntax, right? So he likes Lua, which is apparently one of the languages you can use for Roblox. So that's his favorite right now. I always complain about Python making you indent so much.
Yeah.
But then he'll catch me doing something, like caught me putting the word var in a Python script, and he said, "Daddy, why are you putting JavaScript in that?" So what can I say? I didn't have these kind of conversations with my dad when I was 8. Les, what are your favorite retro games?
It depends on the era for me. In the 8-bit era, it was Double Dragon. I remember playing that on the Commodore 64, I believe. And just a standard run-of-the-mill beat 'em up, go from left to right, beating people up and trying to get through the levels. 16-bit era, there was 2 games that stand out for me. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time on the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo. Fantastic game. And the complete antithesis of that is The Secret of Monkey Island, which I played on the Commodore Amiga. One of these point-and-click text adventures, Scum Adventure, that's what it was called, based on the engine used for Maniac Mansion. And I loved it because it was a mixture of story, and you had to really get involved with the story, and fantastic artwork. really good.
How about you, Ash?
I have to give Les some kudos there for mentioning Double Dragon, because that was a classic arcade game I used to play. But as far as my favorite games go, I really like simulator games, JRPGs, so Final Fantasy, Harvest Moon. But if you get into emulating on the N64, you can find ports of, what was it called? Animal Forest, which is the precursor to what we know as Animal Crossing. So it just depends on the platform, but those are some of the games that I like.
Yeah, I admit to being, Raspi Peaker. Even when you die on your platformer, you could show your current score in the Matrix before assuming the game. Yep, I was planning to show something on the Matrix after. What I'm trying to figure out, because I haven't seen anything great for doing this on the Unicorn Hat, is how to actually make it show letters. Like there is this, I know there's a library for showing scrolling text, but I'd like it to show sort of permanent text on 2 lines, and I haven't quite figured that out yet, and I want to make it look nice in a nice font. I have to admit, I'm the least artistic person that you probably will ever meet. So for me, just drawing the clouds in the background was a challenge, and nothing was actually drawn. I just figured out, okay, two white dots above 3 white dots, and put in an array to do that. So I have to figure out a better way of drawing letters, but I absolutely would like it to show something on the screen when you die. This is still somewhat of a work in progress. The next thing that my son really wants me to do with it is have another level, so you can actually go to level 2 and 3, and that's why I put a flag there, so you go to the flag. Stan says, is PyGame great for starting in Python? He is 11, I guess that's a child, and wants to learn Java, and I'm trying to steer him toward Python. I will let the folks who have written books answer this. Lorraine, what do you think?
I don't know. I've not used it. I know I used to teach high school computing for a year, and PyGame was all they used. It was just like great entry level. But I've not used anything else. So,
Les?
There is a version of PyGame called PyGame Zero, which abstracts away all the complexities of learning PyGame. It makes it really simple. You can make a running left to right game, jumping around game, really simple, using the website PyGame Zero, and I'll put a link in the comments so everyone can see that. I've used it to build a game where in fact, it wasn't a game, it was a demo. I recreated a demo from the Amiga 500 using PyGame Zero of my very ugly face spinning across the screen to some really bad electro dance music. And it took me about 45 minutes.
So, but as far as for teaching kids, it's hard for me to say because I'm not as up on Java. Stan is asking whether the 11-year-old wants to learn Java and trying to steer him toward learning Python. I think the big difference here is with Python, it's a scripted language, so you can easily run it. Whereas with Java, I think you're primarily compiling it. So I think, especially, I think you're going to want, for using on a Raspberry Pi, Python is the main language that people use. So if the 11-year-old's using a Raspberry Pi, it's also just great for anything in Linux. So obviously, Python is a very, very popular language. Java is a great language to learn too. I personally think Java is more complicated than Python, but maybe that's what the 11-year-old wants, is more complicated. I think it's great to learn either of those languages because they're real grown-up languages. What gets me as a parent, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I want my kid to graduate to standardized programming languages as soon as possible. I don't want him using proprietary block-based language. I mean, at least Scratch, if you use Scratch as a block-based language, at least that's a standard. It's from MIT. It's used all over the place. But I used to do a lot more reviews of robot toys, and maybe as my daughter, who's 1.5, gets old, we'll get into more robot toys again. Now with my son, we're kind of beyond some of these robot toys. But some of these toys that are meant to teach coding, it's like, oh yeah, here's a few little blocks that we've created, and this is all you can ever do with this because it's not a regular programming language. So my advice to parents is try to get your kids into using a standard programming language that is a real programming language. And it is not easy necessarily always to find toys or sets that are made to use regular adult or at least standard like Scratch programming languages. A lot of them have their own code, their own type of block-based code that once you leave that toy is useless to you. I mean, the concepts may be useful, but the actual code is not. One I will recommend to really young kids, like kids who can't read yet, the Lego Boost set my son and I started when he was about 5 is great for pre-literate kids because there's absolutely no writing anywhere, not on the blocks, not in the UI. So kids who can't even read yet can program with it. And it really teaches them like where to drag things. But ultimately, I think you want to get your kids writing code because that's what the grown-ups do. And so whenever I see my son talking about the command prompt or writing code in a text editor, I feel like I'm doing my job as a parent. that's my 2 cents. So I think we've coming toward the end of our show this week. I really want to thank our audience for tuning in as always and giving us some great feedback. By the way, my favorite, since I didn't answer, Dig Dug, the most violent game that you'll ever play from 1981. Really, thank you so much to Lorraine for joining us and showing us her awesome project. To Ash and to Les, we will catch you back here on the Tom's Hardware Podcast at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. BST every Tuesday. And in between, you can catch up with us on YouTube. And of course, we would love you to subscribe, youtube.com/Tom's Hardware. And you can listen to us in audio anywhere that podcasts are downloaded. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.